Welcome to the Outer Hebrides. This is the WINFL show. I'm your host, Ian McKinnon. I'm joined this week by Mr. Jake McGee. Hello, Jake. Good evening.
Good evening.
Yes. It's getting later and later in the evening we're recording these things. And by Mr. Dave Somerville. Good evening to you, Dave.
I'm finally starting to appreciate your own age. I've been up late at night and just feeling a bit tired, at this time of the night. So, I can appreciate you more.
At my age, I feel tired all the time. Just all the time. I could just go for a snooze at any point during the day. Gentlemen, guess what? It's our second last division. Our second last deep dive before we go. Pre-season games are already happening. Things are happening. We're getting so close to kickoff. But we are on our second last division, and it is, of course, the NFC South. Now, last year, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers won the division with a 10-7 record. The Atlanta Falcons came second with 8-9. The Carolina Panthers came 5-12. And the New Orleans Saints came 5-12 in fourth place. Sorry, Jake. Sorry about that. But we are going to start with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now, as I say, last year, 10-7. They scored 502 points, which was fourth best in the NFL, and they allowed 385, which is 16th. 16th ranked defense scoring, and that was a points differential of 117 points. So, Jake McGee, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, division rivals of you, why don't you tell us all about the 2024, what we're expecting from them in 2025?
I mean, yeah, what can't you expect from them at this point? Because that's 4 consecutive NFC South titles. More impressively, they're on their 4th offensive coordinator during that run. I mean, this year it's just Grizzard. Since the head coach came into Bowles, he's had a different OC each year. So it's to maintain that and be a top 5 offense, obviously with Baker Mayfield, with that turnover offensive coordinator is incredible. The general manager, Jason Light, has the most starts by drafted players, and it's no surprise that the GM and the coach have been extended. Now, to start the season, they have 2 road games at the Falcons and then Monday night at the Texans. But weeks 4 to 7, they have the Eagles at the Seahawks, 49ers, and then at the Lions on Monday Night Football. A week 9 bye, which is a pretty nicely placed bye. Week 11 and 12 at Bills and at Rams, Sunday Night Football. But it does get better because the last 6 are pretty good, including the final 3 of at Panthers, at Dolphins in late December, and then the Panthers. So I think if you look at their last 6 games, even if they have only won 4 or 5 games, it might not be all over for them. They went 4-2 in the division last year. They got swept by the Falcons. So they easily... Yeah, they took care of the garbage, and then their closest competitors, it wasn't particularly close either. The Falcons kind of ran them out of town twice. As for kind of people that have left, Robert Hainsey left. Tristan Wirfs expected to miss the start of the season, which is huge. Yeah. Chris Godwin also expected to miss after start of the season, but I'm less worried about that the more I read about Emeka Egbuka. He seems to fit that kind of mold perfectly, and I think he's going to be prying for big things. I'm tempted to really throw my hat in with a dark horse like Offensive Rookie of the Year. Big hopes on Hassan Reddick coming in. Hoping he finds some previous form because last year or 2 he's been here and there with contracts, making more news for contracts than actual sacks, which is not really where you want to be. Lots of change in the cornerback room. Second rounder Benjamin Morris and third rounder Jacob Parrish. There's a lot of change, but also a lot of players coming back. So from an outside standpoint, I don't really see how the Bucs aren't massive favourites to win it for 5 straight years. The biggest question for me is what's the answer to Atlanta, because you can't afford to lose and drop 2 games to your closest competitor, because the Falcons will get better. And if they do get better, you've got to at least take a game off them, So that's what I'll be looking at for the Bucs. I expect them to win the division. I just expect them to also take at least a game off the Falcons this year.
I think you're probably right. The turmoil with the coordinator, you're absolutely right. That didn't do anyone any good. And I'm sure that when Baker went to Tampa Bay, he was like, oh, I'm going to get a bit of consistency now. And it's just been the absolute opposite of what he was expecting. And Dave, the Buccaneers, they do look to be the best team in this division. No matter what had happened in the off-season, barring something disastrous, you kind of have to think the Bucs are favourites again. They do have a good defense, got some great players, and Baker has been much more consistent, and he's looked good. And of course, with Mike Evans coming back for another year, or however many more years this guy's going to play, that connection's still going to be there. He is still an excellent red zone target. What are you expecting from the Bucs 2025?
I think just more of the same, really. They're not in the best division, but they've got a decent team. Baker is, I think he gives them some solid play at quarterback. He's not by any stretch of the imagination the best quarterback in the league or the division or whatever. Well, is he best? I mean, if he's the best in division, maybe. There are very, very good arguments to be made there for Baker. But the Bucs, it's just more of the same. That's all they really need, more of the same. I know the Falcons kind of swept them last year, but the Falcons had no consistency whatsoever. There is some consistency in the division. It's not necessarily the good kind, but the Falcons, I don't see much consistency there. Whereas the Bucs have the ability to challenge every single team in the NFC. They have that ability. We've seen that before. They just have to do it on a more consistent basis. But I think it's more of the same, and onwards and upwards, hopefully, for the sake of Tampa.
Yeah, and Jake, just very quickly before we move on to the next team, I don't think it's even a conversation of who's the best quarterback in this division right now. I mean, we kind of need to wait and see what Penix looks like properly. But, I mean, if you were picking any quarterback from the NFC South, who would you take?
Oh, I don't know. Would you take the guy who started 3 games, the guy who's looked good for 3 games, or the guy that has never played 3 games? I mean, that's a real tough stretch. I mean, it's even in most divisions, Baker Mayfield would have a shout at being the winner. In this division, it's him and then a very large gap before the next man.
Oh yeah,
before Andy Dalton comes in at number 2.
Generally, whoever Baker Mayfield's backup might be the second best quarterback at this point.
That's very true. We're going to move on to the next team, gentlemen. It's the Atlanta Falcons. Now, last year, they finished with an 8-9 record. Quite a surprising 8-9 record, I thought, actually. They scored 389 points, which was 13th in the NFL. They allowed 423, which is 23rd in the NFL. So they finished with a points differential of minus 34. And Dave, the Falcons, as I say, 8-9. It was a surprising 8-9. When you watch some of the games they played in, you're like, how is this team winning any games? And yet somehow they did. They managed to win 8, including sweeping the Bucs, as Jake already mentioned. What do you make of the Falcons in 2025?
Well, looking at them, going into detail, they really, truly are all in on that defensive line. And, you wouldn't be able to say that sort of before the draft because Grady Jarrett was released. Grady Jarrett is gone. He's a 10-year veteran in Atlanta, and now he's gone. Saved them $16.3 million in cap space, and he's now in Chicago. They also got rid of Lorenzo Carter, who departed in free agency. So that there's a big hole at edge, you would think. So what do? In free agency? They bring in Leonard Floyd, who was obviously a former Rams edge, then went to 49ers and just kind of floated about the league. So he returns on a 1-year, $10 million contract. He was at the Falcons before as well, if I remember rightly. But they also brought in a former Ram, Morgan Fox, into a defensive tackle. Not my fault. But then what do they do in free agency? No one's quite sure what they're going to do. They'll probably go for one edge, and then it's kind of, whatever. It could be anything for later on in the draft. But 15th pick in the draft, they pick Jalen Walker, one of Georgia's star edges, and they bring him in. He's going to be fantastic. So he'll add to Leonard Floyd. and there'll be one each on each edge. But then they shock, possibly one of the shocks of the first round. The Falcons traded back in, and they traded their first round pick in next year's draft to the Rams, and they pick another edge in the draft in James Pierce Jr. at Tennessee, which no one really saw coming. I didn't. I don't know if any of us predicted something like that happening. But they didn't really do much else in the draft because they had no pick. They had not many picks. They had the last pick in the third. They had a pick in the fourth. Am I right in saying they might have accidentally forfeited, or they forfeited a pick in the fifth round at some point? I think that might have been a thing. They might have forfeited that. Anyway, okay. But yeah, they only had, I think it was just 5 picks in the entire draft. So they were done after the first round, effectively. They had Xavier Watts from the Fighting Irish at the end of the third round. Billy Bowman Jr., another safety out of Oklahoma. And then they just had an offensive tackle, Jack Nelson, in the 7th round. They weren't really bored about the draft after the first round. So they've gone for much more reinforcements on that defense and try to keep some stability in offense. I think that seems to be the plan. And Raheem Morris has really input a nice structure there. If they're going to do anything this year, I think Raheem Morris has addressed the most glaring needs of the team. So kudos to him there. So I think it's really just a quarterback now is the only question. Is the Atlanta Falcons going to be able to challenge the Tampa Bay Buccaneers?
And Jake, with the Falcons, we look at, Dave mentioned them drafting the pass rush, and you mentioned it last week after the random start of the Falcons being last in the league in sacks. And every year the fans have been screaming for a pass rusher. They went and got them. But I still have to look at the offense here. I don't know what Penix is going to look like. They've got talent. We know the talent's there. They've got Drake London, very talented player, inconsistent. They've got Kyle Pitts, very talented player, inconsistent. They do have the fantastic running back there, Bijan Robinson. And the other one whose name I've completely forgotten, because they did have a sort of...
Algier?
Tyler Algier, that's right. But then it comes to the quarterback, and I just don't know. I've not seen enough of Penix to say this is going to work, and I've got a horrible feeling for the Falcons fans that it might not work. What do you make of them, 2025?
I mean, yeah, defensively, I think the biggest upgrade was also bringing in Jeff Ulbrich, the Jets' former DC and, interim head coach at one point as well, with everything that was going on there. I think, as Dave mentioned, they've made a big investment on defensive line, not just with splashing out on a couple of free agents and a first rounder. They've put another first rounder in next year. So they're kind of expecting to win now, and you can't really blame them because they were 2 games behind the Bucs. They beat the Bucs. It's right there for the taking. They think they've hit on Michael Penix. He certainly makes Drake London better because when Kirk Cousins was at the helm, Darnell Mooney seemed to be the wide receiver one.
Yeah.
And Drake London kind of the forgotten about one. And then Michael Penix came in and got Drake London the ball, which is probably a good tactic. In the preseason and training camp, he's really talking up Kyle Pitts. I don't know if that's for his fantasy drafts. He's hoping some of his mates make the mistake of drafting Kyle Pitts. Or maybe it's just confidence of just saying, Kyle Pitts is my guy, got to get his ball, watch this. Because it's lots of questions around Kyle Pitts. He's coming up to kind of the 5th-year option time, and now you would definitely not take him. So this is a big year for him. It's basically a contract year. If he plays really well, the Falcons will go, maybe we've only seen 1 year. We'll pick up the 5th-year option and see what we've got. If he has a bad year, the Falcons are going to say, we're going to deny that 5th year. We're just going to move on and draft someone in the 2nd round because we got a first rounder. For kind of their schedule-wise, very early Week 5 bye. And if you are worried about the Falcons, don't worry. They have 6 standalone games. We will see lots of the Falcons this year. To my great joy. So they have Bucs at the Vikings on Sunday Night Football, at the Panthers, and then the Commanders. And then coming off the bye, Bills on Monday Night Football, at the 49ers on Sunday Night Football. Week 10 to 11 now, 10 to 14 now, at Colts in Berlin. So again, an away game, not a home game lost, and it's the Colts. Panthers at Saints, at Jets. They're all very winnable games. So I think there'll be stretches similar to the Bucs and similar to pretty much everyone in the NFC South. I think you've got to see a lot of losses and a lot of wins kind of in runs. But it is just those 3 games of Penix where they, a short sample size, end of the season, against some pretty poor teams. They've kept Kirk Cousins around, which is interesting because you'd think they'd kind of want that clean break. I mean, he's pretty untradeable, to be fair, with the money they gave him. But again, Michael Penix is getting a nod at the moment. But if he has 3-4 bad games, he's going to be feeling like looking over his shoulder. So sometimes the best thing you could do, similar to how the Broncos did it, is, hey, Bo Nix, there's no distraction. Russell Wilson's gone. Next guy, we don't even know his name. You are the quarterback. Full faith. I'm not sure there is full faith in Penix at the moment.
No, I don't think there is. I really don't think there is. And I don't know. As you say, those games at the end of the season, we've all been lulled into a false sense of security by a young quarterback at the end of the season in garbage time who's looked great for 2 games or 3 games. We've all been there at some point. And not that I think Penix is a bad quarterback. I certainly don't think he is. I just don't know if this is going to translate into wins for the Falcons. Maybe with the exception of some of those later ones, with some of the easier games. We'll need to wait and see. I'm just not convinced, shall we see. So we're going to move on, gentlemen, and we come to our next team, and it is the Carolina Panthers. Last year, a record of 5-12. They scored 341 points, which is 24th in the NFL. They allowed 534, which is dead last, 32nd in the league, giving them a points differential of minus 193, which is truly horrendous. And then you have to think, how on earth did they win 5 games? With a negative 193 points differential. But they did. They did. Looking at what they've done in the off-season, not a lot as far as players goes. They signed punter Sam Martin to a 1-year deal. They signed running back Rico Dowdle to a 1-year deal. Wide receiver David Moore to a 1-year deal. They brought in Hunter Renfrow. I like that.
Retirement.
I like Hunter Renfrow. They've got him in. And of course, in the draft, it was all about their first round player, Ted McMillan. So they've got him. He looks good. Guys they released, Jadeveon Clowney, defensive end, he's gone. Tight end Jordan Matthews is gone. And linebacker Josie Jewell, which kind of surprised me, although he wasn't fully healthy last year. But the backroom staff is where the biggest changes came. With the Panthers, they hired 6 assistants in the offseason, including defensive backs coach and both an offensive and a defensive assistant. But they kept their head coach and both coordinators. So you think, you've signed 6 backroom guys? It's very, very strange. So head coach Dave Canales is still there. Offensive coordinator Brad Idzik is there. I don't know if it's Idzik or Idzik. I'm not sure. Idzik, we'll go with that. And defensive coordinator Ejiro Evero, who, as you know, I have the utmost respect for. And one of the things that they did, which is probably the smartest thing they could do, is they re-signed quarterback Andy Dalton as backup to Bryce Young. Jake, I'll throw it over to you first. The Carolina Panthers won 5 games last year. They probably shouldn't have won 5 games, but they did. And towards, later on in the season, Bryce Young did look better. Remember, he got benched for Dalton, came back, looked slightly better, but they've not really made any splashes in the offseason. And this team really needed to, because we saw how much money they've spent, and they've spent a ton of money, but the big name power just isn't there on the Carolina Panthers. What do you make of them in 2025?
Yeah, they made the big investment the year before on the offensive line, and hopefully they'll reap more of the benefit of that this year. Obviously, Tetero McMillan is their big hope of getting a big body wide receiver, because they've got a lot of good wide receivers. I think they've actually maybe got a quite underrated wide receiver room, especially with Hunter Renfro.
Definitely.
So I think they've got some good, chain movers, but having that big body could make a big difference. Rico Dowdle and Trevor Etienne. It'd be interesting to see if.
Oh yeah, forgot about him.
If Rico Dowdle can kind of do anything, and what Trevor Etienne is. I'm not expecting him to be as good as his brother, but time will tell. For them, a lot of changes, like you say, with the assistants, but this is the first time since 2019 they're starting a season with the same general manager, head coach, and quarterback, which is insane. It's just bonkers. Looking at this season, 3 of their first 4 are on the road. They play the Bills and then at the Packers back-to-back. They play at the 49ers on Monday Night Football into the Rams before their Week 14 bye. And they end the season with Bucks, Seahawks at Bucks. So again, as I mentioned with the other 2 teams, there's runs here where you're like, okay, they might win here, they might lose there, but there's just like, okay, we're going to lose those 3, we're going to win those 3. And I'm not saying that will happen because, any given Sunday, but there's just some runs in their schedule you look at and you're like, that is brutal. So you just hope for the Panthers' sake they see more progression from Bryce Young. I'm not expecting him to throw 5,000 yards and, be in the convention for MVP, but, just if they can see progression, they can keep surrounding him with better weapons. They've got brought a second-year head coach back, Dave Canales, who maybe didn't have a great year, but they've obviously seen something to trust him and say, hey, you benched the quarterback. Andy Dalton did fine. Andy Dalton got injured. Bryce Young came back with that kind of refreshed, not as much pressure on him, I think. And I think Andy Dalton, all jokes aside, I think it's a huge bringing him back because he's clearly a very good mentor for him, because you see them on the sideline when they get together. There's no jealousy for Andy Dalton. He's been there. He's been the Red Rifle. He's been the big guy. He's at the start of his, career now where he's saying, yeah, I've got, that's my role. I'll come in on, injuries or if the game's gone or if I need to be. But he's more than willing to kind of put his arm around the young guy and say, listen, this is what I would do. This is what we need to do. So I think that's huge for Bryce Young. And I think it clearly showed in the second half of the season.
Oh, definitely. And Dave, it does seem like a joke when you see, arguably the biggest signing they made was taking Andy Dalton back for another year. But the change in Bryce Young was monumental. I mean, he went from really looking like the worst quarterback in the entire NFL to being a serviceable quarterback in the NFL. And the gulf was huge. And as Jake says, you could see it. Andy Dalton, this is a guy who's been in the league for, I don't know how many years Andy Dalton's been in the league now. 15 years.
Probably 15 year vet, I think.
15 years. And let's not forget, he played on the Bengals against some of those Steeler defenses and Ravens defenses. He has seen the best players. He's seen Hall of Fame defenders coming at him over the course of his career. If anyone can help a young quarterback, it's someone like that. And again, as Jake mentioned, I sound like I'm just parroting Jake here. There's no jealousy there. We've seen guys like Joe Flacco actually come out and say, it's not my job to mentor the young guy. It is. That's why we signed you. And maybe to come in if it doesn't work out. That's it. And Andy Dalton, there's none of that. He's having fun. And I'm sure that if he never plays a single snap this season, he'll be quite happy to sit there on the bench or stand on the sideline, make a couple of $1 million and go, the kid did all right. Check that out. Dave, what do you make of the Carolina Panthers?
I don't think we should forget that they signed J.C. Horn to the $100 million contract extension.
Yeah, that's a good point.
A cornerback. That was huge, very, very big contract. I like J.C. Horn. He's a very, very good cornerback. Is he $100 million 4-year cornerback? Well, probably not right now.
He's very good.
He's very good, but I think he's going to look a bit better value for money in like a year or two, I think, with the way the markets are going. One signing I did pick up on that I really do like is Bobby Brown. Now, Bobby Brown is a massive, humongous human being that I would never say that to his face about, because he is more than 2 of me, literally size and weight. So he is an amazing... He's essentially a run-stopping defensive tackle, but to me, he's like a kind of top 5 in that specific category. I really rate this guy highly, and the Panthers have got him in on a 3-year, $21 million contract. So, that average is $7 million across the deal. And I think I saw in the last day or two that Austin Corbett, who's on a 1-year, $3 million deal, is going to be their starting center. So that's a bit of value for money there, because he was signed for more for depth than anything else. But apparently he's going to be the starting center. So maybe keep an eye on there. If they've got some value, then maybe there's room for another free agent to come in on that, on that kind of money-friendly team deal. But you can't really... The way that Bryce Young kicked on after Andy Dalton's kind of stint at, coming in, I'm wondering if Atlanta are going to look at that and think if Penix has a few bad games, is that why we keep Kirk Cousins around? I mean, it's the money. The money is astronomically different, so you can't really compare the two situations. But if you put Penix, if he just say he loses 3 games in a row and he's really bad, you bring in Cousins for a couple games, and then you give Penix take him out of the spotlight just for a couple weeks. Let him have some backup quarterback reps instead of like the starter reps and all the pressure there. Relieve the pressure a bit, and then that's what the Panthers did with Bryce Young. And look, I genuinely think there's a good quarterback there. Maybe they can help him now after that kind of break, and he's got a new view on things.
Well, I mean, for his sake, I hope so, because he's one of those players who, again, it's not his fault he was drafted first overall. It's not his fault he went to an absolute garbage team. And he went to a garbage team. That first year, he nearly got killed. That was terrible. It's like what we saw with Caleb Williams in Chicago. Just no chance whatsoever. Last year, we thought they'd got some weapons. The wide receiver thing didn't really quite work out for them. This year, we'll see what happens. Hopefully, as I say, for Bryce Young's sake, it does work out. But as Jake alluded to again, it's a really tough schedule. It is tough for all these NFC South teams. It's difficult. Is it the AFC East and NFC West that they've got? Yeah. I mean, we can all laugh at the Jets. Of course we can. We know that Dave likes to laugh at other teams, but comparing them to the NFC South, no offense, Jake, across the board, those teams are better than the teams, with the exception possibly of Tampa Bay. And it's really hard to see where they can find any wins outside of the division. It really is quite difficult. So we'll see how they get on. But we do come to our final team. And it's Jake's team. It is the New Orleans Saints. Now, last year, 5-12, they scored 338 points, which was 25th in the NFL. They allowed 398, which is 19th in the NFL, so a negative 60 points differential. 5-12. I'm not really going to talk about them, Jake. This is your team. The floor is yours. Take your time. Take a drink if you need it. Tell us all about your New Orleans Saints.
What's going to be in that drink?
Sadly, I'm on one water at the moment. That's not going to do the job. Those points differentials don't really do the Saints justice, because after this 2-0 start, we were probably like plus 91. And then I think weeks 3 to 14 was probably 91 to 300 of those points. So some horrible injuries after a flying start where I thought, we might actually have something. And then a few injuries to a pretty poor roster and a very old roster was curtains. That would be the first time since 2000 with no primetime game. Hard to blame the schedule makers for that one. Doubt we get the start like last year, because we start with the Cardinals, 49ers, at Seahawks, at Bills to open up. Saints haven't played a rookie quarterback week 1 and started one since Archie Manning. I mean, we hadn't drafted one as high as Tyler Shook in the second round since Archie Manning. It's very easy to think the Saints are a good team. In my lifetime and my fanhood, the Saints have been good because Drew Brees and Sean Payton. before Drew Brees and Sean Payton, a very, very bad team. And it's turning out post Drew Brees and Sean Payton, a pretty bad team as well. So all eyes will be obviously on the quarterback play. In positive news, because everyone always says, "Oh, sorry, we're talking about the Saints," or "Sorry, talking about the NFC South." I'm probably the toughest on the Saints and the South myself, so don't need to apologize to me. But the good news is that there's a homecoming kind of theme going on, because we brought Brandon Cooks home, we brought Isaac Yiadom home, Justin Reed, Devon Godchaux, Will Clapp all return to Louisiana. So I think there's some good vibes, at least, and people that care about the city. Re-signed Chase Young and Juwan Johnson to far too much money for my liking. Julian Blackman comes in. I think that was a great signing, especially with the news that Tyrann Mathieu also retired. Obviously, on the offense, most of the focus being on Derek Carr retiring. Fixing the O-line has been the main focus. Like I say, Will Clapp brought in Dylan Radunz for depth, and then the first-round pick being spent on Calvin Banks Jr., who I think will start left tackle, which frees up Talisa Fuaga to move to his more natural right tackle. And you look at the offensive line, you've got first-round pick, second-round pick, first-round pick, first-round pick. So you can see where kind of the investment of this team is. If you can get a good offensive line, obviously we've got Alvin Kamara. Problem is Kendrick Miller, his backup, has spent most of his life injured. Devin Neal comes in as a rookie. We'll see what he can do. As I mentioned, I've only seen him play once. It was against Colorado, and he scored like 4 touchdowns. So he's got a pretty high bar for what I'm expecting from him. Kellen Moore's got a heck of a job in his hands. Yeah. And I've spoken to kind of Dave and Ewan and even yourself, Neil, about this. Like, the best case scenario for me is the Saints go 3-14, lock up a top 3 pick, and one of Tyler Shook or Spencer Rattler, sorry, Jake Hayner, I don't count you, show some promise. I don't think you'll be able to kind of lay your hat on it, but if, Tyler Shook comes in and throws, 3,500 yards, 20 touchdowns, 20 interceptions, and you can see kind of the vision for the 35-year-old rookie, there's something to build on, because you don't want to be going in next year, okay, we need a quarterback again, which is very, very possible. I mean, Tyler Shook in preseason threw a pick 6, but like 3 plays later threw a 57-yard bomb touchdown. He's been to 3 different colleges, been in college for 7 years, had redshirt issues, broke his collarbone, broke his knee. The dude is mentally tough. He's like 6'5", got a cannon of an arm, good base. To me, that's our best hope. Spencer Rattler, has the very unfortunate win-loss record of like 0-6 because he was playing in weeks 3 to 14 with, Jimmy from
there was no one
Pizza Hut playing wide receiver. So it's hard to blame Spencer Rattler for his horrendous record. We kind of know what Spencer Rattler is. He's exciting. He's basically like Jameis Winston light. For me, we've got to see what, you don't spend a second round, a very high second round, number 40 pick on a quarterback and don't see what you've got. And I think after the first preseason game, I'll be very surprised if Tyler Shook gets a start in the second preseason game. We can't go through all of training camp splitting quarterback reps between all 3 quarterbacks. No. You have to just put your hat on a guy and say, you're my guy, you're going to get the first team reps. Because if you give 3 quarterbacks first team reps, you've got no quarterbacks. Was it Bill Walsh that said if you've got 2 quarterbacks, you've got no quarterbacks?
Yep.
We've got 3, and we don't have a quarterback. So I think Doug Musmeyer, Kellen Moore, there's a lot of quarterback. I think Scott Tolzien's there as well. A lot of people there that are known for making good quarterbacks and dealing with good quarterbacks. Justin Herbert had his best years under Kellen Moore. Dak Prescott had his best years under Kellen Moore. Jalen Hurts just won a Super Bowl with Kellen Moore. So you've got to give the guy a chance. I'd be surprised if it's not Tyler Shook. I don't want the Saints. The worst thing for me, before I pass on to you guys, the worst thing for me is if the Saints win 7 games. Because if we win 7 games and don't really do anything, we're picking like 19th. This roster needs a reset. Derek Carr has given us a gift by retiring. Tyrann Mathieu retiring probably helps. We need to cut Taysom Hill. I'm sorry, he's like 35, coming off a catastrophic knee injury, earning like $18 million. Love you, but it got to go. We've just got to rip off the Band-Aid. Cam Jordan should have retired. We need to hit reset, and I want Mickey Loomis to be fired out of a cannon. But what do you guys think about the New Orleans Saints?
I'll tell you what I think first, and then Dave, I'll chuck it over to you. The issue that I have with the Saints is that last year they were pretty terrible, but they were like the second or third most injured team in the entire NFL. I mean, they lost everyone. And I know you said Taysom Hill's an old guy, but he was still effective in a lot of ways, and they lost him. Rashid Shaheed is one of the most exciting players I've seen in a decade, and he goes down injured. Alvin Kamara played the last half of the season with an injury. Everyone was injured in the Saints team, and they won 5 games. So I think the problem is, Jake, that if they stay healthy, they might win more games this year than they did last year. And I know you don't want to hear that. But I like Spencer Rattler. I do. I think that there's ability there. If they can get consistency out of him and not making mistakes, they can do okay. I don't know what they were thinking drafting Shook. There was other. I don't know. I mean,
you saw my reaction, and I said in the build-up, I said in round 1, I said in round 2, and everyone was like, "What do you Saints do?" And I was like, "Oh, there's tons of good options here. There are good options. Don't draft the 26-year-old rookie who's coming off 2 massive injuries and 3 colleges." But he's my guy now, so we'll just...
Well, here's your guy, and of course, if he does start, you'll root for him because he's your quarterback. Dave, the New Orleans Saints, it was tough to watch last year. By the end of the season, that was just a bunch of postmen out there trying to play with the big boys, and it just wasn't fair in this team. There should be a change of mindset going into this year, and if they can stay healthy, and if they do manage to hit on one of these young quarterbacks, they might actually win a couple more games, and Jake's going to just lose his mind again. What do you make of the New Orleans Saints?
This could be a long year. This could be a really long year. Look, Spencer Rattler, we enjoy watching him play. There's no doubt about it. Well, maybe Jake doesn't, but with the rest of us, 31 other teams in the league love watching him play because he's fun to watch. Because you don't really know what you're going to get. He's like Jake says, he's like diet Jameis. That's pretty much Rattler in a nutshell. But I'd still rather have Jameis as the QB1. I don't know what they were thinking. Just to echo what you were saying, taking that quarterback in the second round, that just unreal. I'm sorry, that was just not the correct decision, and there was, I don't think anyone's been kind to him in their analysis of his current play, of his college play. I would be surprised. I mean, Jake would be able to. Jake, is it over under 5.5 maybe, or 4. It was 4.5. I think we found out today. It was originally at 5.5, and I think it's gone down to 4.5. So 4 or 5 is the betting for the Saints, and I'm struggling at this point to see where those 5 wins are coming from. They might scrape the 5 wins, but it'll be close, I think. So that's the kind of situation. This is full rebuild mode. Get rid of Loomis, for God's sake.
Oh, I thought we weren't going to mention that name in front of Jake.
But, I've been crying out for, and many Saints fans have, especially when Drew Brees left, is, stop kicking the can down the road. Salary cap hell for 4 or 5 years. Well, probably about 10, 15 years, let's be honest. But, you can live with it when you got Drew Brees. You go like, we're dying for a rebuild. So, if it is a tough season and we do rebuild, I'm willing to bite that bullet and take that pill because that's what we've been asking for. I just don't want us to be like 4-2 somehow and like trade for someone and pretend we're a real team like we have been for the last 5 years. We're not a real team. We're a very aging roster, one of, if not the oldest roster. The draft, I think, some of them looked very good. Like Fatal Diggs, 7th rounder, got a sack in preseason. I know it's only preseason, but players like, oh, well, okay, maybe we'll hit on some of these guys. If we can have, a 2017 draft, yeah, maybe in a year or two we can. So I would be more than happy if we just sucked for a year or two, if that meant we had a vision. we've not had a vision for 3 or 4 years, and this is where it's got us.
Yeah, I think the Saints are going to go one of two ways. They either are going to somehow win like 7 games, or they're going to just absolutely capitulate and end up with like just 1 or 2. I don't know which one it's going to be. If it is going to be 1 or 2, Jake, like I said last week, I hope it's entertaining. And I hope you put up 30 points a game and lose every game 32-31. You know, I hope it's something like that. So at least you get some enjoyment out of it. Because there's nothing worse than watching a bad team that's really boring to watch. I
think there'll be a lot of red zone in my house this year.
There might be. Gentlemen, that essentially wraps up our NFC South deep dive into the teams. But of course, we do have to make our predictions. Jake, why don't you put us out of our misery and give us your predictions first for your team and the rest of the NFC South?
Well, obviously, I've got the New Orleans Saints coming in 4th place with a 4-13 record. I then have the Carolina Panthers coming 3rd. Sadly, still just 5-12, which feels a bit harsh. But like I say, I looked at their schedule. I couldn't really see where I could give them the wins. Maybe they'll surprise me. I have the Falcons at 9-8, so they do improve, but not enough, because the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who go 5-1 in the division, finish 10-7, so they just eat up the division and struggle everywhere else. But I have the Bucks retaining for a 5th straight year.
Dave, would you like to go next for your predictions?
Yeah, why not? Well, I do have the Bucks winning again. Is it for the 5th or 6th year?
Yeah,
running?
5th
year running, yeah. But they're almost caught a little bit, as they have a 10-7 record, and they only seal it on the final day. As, of course, they beat Carolina, and the Falcons run them close, but they get a 9-8 record and 2nd, but they just miss out on the playoffs, the Atlanta Falcons. Carolina slightly improved to 6-11, and I have chopped and changed with this one. The Saints get 2nd pick in the draft with a 3-14 record.
Well, I've got Tampa Bay winning the division. There's no surprises. 11-6. I've actually got the Falcons taking a slight step back to 7-10. I just need to see what Penix does. I think he's going to be good, but I need to see it. So I'm giving them 7 wins. I'm giving the Carolina Panthers the same record as last year, 5-12. Again, they made some moves, but they didn't do anything. And I think other teams have improved more than the Panthers. And the schedule is tough. I can't see them winning more than 5 games. And I am giving Jake his dream. I'm giving it to him. Your New Orleans Saints are going to suck. They are going to be so bad, Jake. But they're also going to be entertaining. And I've got them also with the 2nd pick in the draft with a 2-15 record. I apologize for thinking your team's going to be this bad, but I think, as you say, Jake, it's the best thing for your team. 2-15, 2nd pick in the draft. And that is my prediction for the NFC South. So, gentlemen, there we have it. Now, it's been a slightly shorter podcast. Only 3 of us, so we don't have 4 people talking about all the teams. We do have time for one more segment, which is, of course, random stats. Now, who would like to go first for a random stat? Or would you like me to go first? Jake. Jake's got his hand up there. On you go, pal.
Well, look at us all volunteering. Mm-hmm. Well, I didn't mind because NFC South tried to make it relevant. Most passing yards since 2010. And you'll be no surprise at the bottom 4. The New York Jets come in with just 53,282. Then the Bears, Titans, Panthers. You might be surprised who's 28th. The Buffalo Bills. That's a bit of a surprise.
Oh,
this is since 2010.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, 25th, Ravens. 24th, 49ers. I mean, there's some very big surprises in here. The Broncos are our 14th with 60,076.
Thanks, Peyton Manning and nobody else.
The Rams 22nd, 58,252. The Jags were 27th, so less said about that, the better. The Bucks were 5th with 65,103. Beaten out just by the Falcons in 4th with 65,406. And coming in first, thank you, Sean Payton and Drew Brees. The New Orleans Saints top something in this podcast, 68,150. Top of the pops. Thank God it just stopped the count. 2010, 2025, somehow we're still top. Stop the count.
That'll do. That'll do. Yep, that's there you go. 15-year stretch. Lead the NFL in passing yards. Why don't I go next, and then Dave, you can finish us off. How does that sound? Yeah?
Let's go.
So, my random stat is also about the NFC South. Now, all-time records for all 4 teams in the NFC South. All-time records. Every single team. We'll start with the youngest team. It's the Carolina Panthers. Okay? They have won 219 games. They have lost 264 games, and they have tied, because we know Dave loves his ties, one game tied. Next up in wins, we have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers with 318. They came into the league in 1976. 318, 457 losses, 1 tie. Next up, we have the Atlanta Falcons with 398 wins versus 512 losses. I believe they were 1966 when the Falcons came in. Falcons? What? Falcons, thank you very much. 6 ties for the Falcons. And then the winningest team in the NFC South is the New Orleans Saints. 417 wins to 480 losses, 5 ties. Thanks to Drew Brees and Sean Payton, because basically prior to that, the Saints were, as Jake will know from his history, were garbage, despite Archie. Whoa, hey, what was that? Premonition. Despite Archie Manning's absolute heroics, despite Jim Mora and his Dome Patrol defense of 1990 and 1991, quick shout out, once again, 4 Pro Bowl linebackers in the same team. Never happened before, never happened since. So that gives the Tampa Bay Buccaneers a winning percentage of 41%. It gives the Atlanta Falcons a winning percentage of 43.8%. It gives Carolina Panthers a winning percentage of 45.4%. It gives the New Orleans Saints a winning percentage of 46.5%. And Patrick Jackson's probably going, are you ever actually going to tell us what your random stat is? Yes. The NFC South is the only division where all 4 teams have a losing record all time.
Hey, we can shake hands with the Bucks and say, hey, at least we won a Super Bowl.
Absolutely you can. For Patrick Jackson, who's probably going to be listening to this, a bonus random stat, because I went through all the teams. I went through like the entire NFL for records. I had to do that to make sure this was the only division. Jacksonville Jaguars are the only team in the entire history of the NFL who've not tied a game.
Oh, well, Dave's going to go change some of his season predictions.
Is he?
He's going to force the Jaguars.
Yes, he's like, they tie 3 times. 3 times. They open 0-0-3. Start the season, what do you reckon, Dave? You think that's possible?
Jags' final record. They just miss out the playoffs with a 7-7-3 record.
Love it. Dave, why don't you finish off our podcast with your random stat?
Hot take. I don't think the Jaguars are going to tie any games this year purely because of the kicker they've got that kicked 70 yards in preseason. So that was an amazing feat. So good on him. Mine is a lot shorter and sweeter. I was looking at my predictions for all the teams, but what they're going to interdivisional records are going to be, their home records, blah, blah, blah. And obviously the team I was looking at today was the Falcons. I was thinking, I thought maybe at their home record, they could actually spring a surprise. They could even possibly, a very outside chance, go unbeaten at home if they play their cards right.
Okay.
But I settled that they probably won't.
Okay.
But I went back to look at the stats, and I wondered, have the Falcons ever actually been unbeaten at home? And they were once. In 1998, they went 8-0. And in that year, what did they do? They reached the Super Bowl.
They did.
A spoiler, they didn't win it.
They didn't win it.
It says the most Atlanta thing that anyone said on this podcast today. Yes, they didn't win it because they did get absolutely crushed by the Broncos by 34 points to 19. In the Super Bowl, they won very close games on the way to the Super Bowl because they beat the 49ers by 20 points to 18, and then they went to overtime against the Vikings in the NFC Championship.
We all remember that game. Well, you don't remember it, but yeah.
Yeah, but I mean that was a pretty good Falcons team, but again, most Falcons thing ever is that they lost the Super Bowl quite spectacularly. So 1998 Broncos were no bad, were they? So
to be fair to the Falcons, in that game, they had no chance. That 98 Broncos team was absolutely stacked. There are people who say, if the Vikings, the 15-1 Vikings that got there, they'd have won. No, they would not. That Broncos team was loaded. And also there was it Eugene Robinson who was the safety for the Falcons? Got arrested the night before this game. I think he did.
Yes.
I think it was Eugene Robinson. But of course, the big story about that is it was an NFC Championship game against the Vikings, the 15-1 Vikings. Randy Moss doing Randy Moss things. Randall Cunningham looking like an absolute monster, reborn in Minnesota. And the kicker, and I'm going to say it was Gary Anderson, because Morton Anderson was the guy who played for the Saints, played for 100 years, was one of the greatest kickers of all time. Gary Anderson missed a field goal with just a couple of minutes to go in the game, and it was his first miss of the year. He hadn't missed a field goal, and it was a chip shot, and he missed it, and everyone was just dumbstruck. If you haven't seen it, I'm sure Jake's in it. If you haven't seen it, Dave, just go onto YouTube and look up the 1998 NFC Championship game. It was bizarre. Utterly bizarre.
I was going to say, I think Morton Anderson was the kicker for the Falcons in that game.
Quite possibly. He did play for about 40 years for the Saints and the Falcons.
Do you know, he might have been. I think he did play for the...
He was the kicker.
You might be right there. He was with the Saints for 100 years. Yeah, he was. And he was amazing. Because it was Gary Anderson and Morton Anderson around at the same time. And they both played till they were like 70 or something like that.
Yeah.
There's nothing the Minnesota Vikings fear more than an NFC Championship against an NFC South team. Never ends well. To be fair, just very similar to the Falcons, never ends well for the Vikings, to be fair.
Oh, no.
NFC Bills, you know.
They are. They're the only other team to lose 4 Super Bowls. And that, go to 4 and lose 4. It's the Vikings, the Bills. There you go. Gentlemen, that is the end of our podcast. Thank you very much. Do appreciate it. Next week, we are doing the NFC West. It is our final divisional deep dive. We're going to get to your team, Dave, because I know we haven't spoken about them at all over the past 7 weeks.
Nope.
They've not been mentioned.
Nope.
I might just skip next week, Jake. What do you think?
I'm not going to be even in the country, so I'm okay.
Good luck getting back into the country with that attitude, is all I'm going to say.
Are you going somewhere nice, Jake?
Budapest.
Oh, lovely. Fantastic. I hope you have a wonderful time in Budapest. Next week, we are doing the NFC West, so don't forget that. Don't forget you can subscribe to us on our YouTube channel, the WINFL Show, where you can find this and all of our other deep dives. You can also find us on Instagram and Twitter, whatever you want to call it. You find us at the WINFL Show. Thank you very much to Mr. Jake McGee. Do appreciate it.
Always a pleasure.
Thank you to Dave Somerville. Appreciate you.
Always a pleasure as well.
Thank you to everyone listening at home. And you can find us on next week's edition of the WINFL Show.
And we're clear.